So I want you to picture a narrow dirt track on this really freezing, just gray morning in the hills of Wales.
Oh, yeah, the perfect setting for
Right.
this.
And there's this massive herd of half-ton cattle, and they're moving along the ridge. And down low, like almost completely out of sight at ankle height, there's this small red and white shape that's just darting in and out of the herd.
And it's not chaos, right? It looks like it might be, but it's watching.
Exactly. It's so precise. It ducks in, gives the cow's heel this sharp nip to force it forward, and then before that cow can even think about kicking back, the dog is just gone.
Just vanishes.
Yeah, his duck sideways, like completely avoiding a lethal hoof that honestly would have easily shattered the ribs of a taller dog.
Completely.
So welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are stripping that fluffy, smiling internet meme away from the Pembroke Welsh Corgi. Because the dog that's probably sleeping by your refrigerator right now is actually, well, it's a highly engineered cattle driving machine.
It really is. And it's this remarkable clash between perception and reality. I mean, you look at them today, right? Just lounging on a velvet pillow.
Right, living their best life.
Yeah, and it is almost impossible to reconcile that image with a dog that was built to endure muddy pastures and violent livestock. But, if you don't understand the cattle dog, you are inevitably going to fail the modern pet.
Which is exactly our mission today. We are looking at a stack of sources that completely deconstruct the history, the anatomy, and the really unique behavioral quirks of this breed.
There are a lot of works.
So many. And whether you are actively looking for a puppy, or maybe you already have a Pembroke aggressively guarding your back door right now, or you're just fascinated by how humans have selectively engineered animals for these hyper-specific tasks, this deep dive is going to completely change how you view cute dogs.
I guarantee it will.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand why they are the way they are, we have to look at the history. And the history is, well, it's this wild mix of rugged survival and literal fairy tales.
It really is. The folklore surrounding this breed is incredibly rich. For centuries in Wales, the legend was that the Corgi was the steed of the fairies.
Wait, like they literally rode them?
Yes. The tales describe these tiny fairy warriors using the dogs to pull tiny enchanted carriages through the forests or herding fairy cattle or even, riding them into battle.
That is just incredible. And the best part of that legend is physical, right? Like some Pembrokes have these markings across their shoulders. It's like a slightly different shade and thickness of fur that sits right behind their neck.
Yes, the fairy saddle.
Right. The Welsh folklore insists that this marking is the ghost of a fairy saddle left behind by those tiny warriors.
It's just undeniable charm. But what's fascinating here is that the people inventing the fairy stories and the farmers working those muddy lanes, they were actually observing the exact same psychological trait.
Oh, that makes so much sense. Like they were both seeing the same core dog.
Exactly. The storyteller saw a dog that acted like a fierce, fearless warhorse, completely unafraid of things 10 times its size. And the farmer saw that same staggering bravery. They just, applied it to moving, stubborn livestock.
But the reality of their creation wasn't magical. It was gritty. I mean, we have this image today of neat, tidy dog breeding, but the early Corgi was developed through ruthless, practical tweaking. It was based entirely on what worked in the field.
Yeah, it was survival of the fittest, basically.
Right. It's kind of like open source software. There was no single inventor sitting on a Welsh hillside in the 1200s with a blueprint and a pristine stud book.
Far from it. The documented reality actually starts around the 12th century when Flemish weavers migrated to Wales, and they brought with them these Spitz-type dogs.
So Spitz-type dogs, those are the ancestors of modern breeds like the Schipperke and the Pomeranian, right?
Yeah, exactly. And those dogs mixed with the native Welsh cattle dogs. The farmers, they weren't selecting for a specific ear shape or like a pretty coat color. The selection process was purely functional.
Like, did it do the job?
Right. Did that dog duck fast enough to survive a kick? Keep it. Is it loud and aggressive enough to move a stubborn 1,000-pound cow? Keep it. If a dog didn't contribute to the harsh daily work of a rural farm, frankly, didn't eat.
Wow. So they were constantly patching the code over centuries. The blueprint emerged just because it kept being useful.
Exactly.
But then, agriculture shifted, the Industrial Revolution happened, people moved to towns, and eventually the breed caught the eye of someone who completely changed their global trajectory.
Queen Elizabeth II.
Yep. Her lifelong love for the Pembroke Welsh Corgi made them honestly one of the most recognizable silhouettes on Earth.
Oh, without a doubt. But the sources are careful to point out that this royal spotlight is exactly where the modern misunderstanding really takes root.
How so?
Well, when the general public sees a dog constantly flanked by footmen in royal palaces, they build an entire personality profile based on that context.
Right. They assume the dog was fundamentally bred to be this decorative royal companion. They see the short legs and think, oh, small, low to the ground, probably fragile, doesn't do much.
Which couldn't be further from the truth.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting. Because those short legs, they are not an aesthetic quirk. They are highly engineered evolutionary armor. I mean, it's like the Pembroke isn't a fragile, broken-down sedan. It's a low-riding sports car built to corner fast and handle extreme pressure.
That's a great way to look at it.
And the sources explain that the Pembroke has a condition called chondrodysplasia, which is an inherited skeletal development, or, well, true dwarfism.
Yeah. And this is where human perception fails us. We generally view a biological defect like dwarfism as a vulnerability. But the Welsh farmers weaponized that biological defect.
Weaponized dwarfism. That is wild.
It is, because think about it. When you are moving cattle, a taller dog with long legs, like a standard shepherd, is going to take a defensive kick straight to the ribs.
Right, which would be devastating.
Fatal, often. But a dog with chondrodysplasia is naturally positioned beneath the trajectory of the hoof.
Okay, but wait, I have to push back on this a little. If they literally suffer from a form of dwarfism in their skeletal structure, doesn't that inherently make them too fragile for modern dog sports or hiking? Like, I'd be terrified to take a dog with a compromised spine on a rugged hike.
It's a really common concern. The visual of dwarfism makes us assume fragility, but it's actually the opposite when they are conditioned correctly.
Really?
Yeah, their center of gravity gives them incredible torque. They have substantial bone density and this massive pulling power in their chest and shoulders.
So they're basically little tanks.
Exactly. The structure does create a responsibility for the owner to manage their physical development safely, but it is not a ban on activity. A well-conditioned Pembroke shouldn't look like a stretched-out toy dog struggling to walk. I mean, they can absolutely hike, do advanced scent work, and even compete in agility.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And we should clarify a structural point here that trips up almost everyone, which is the difference between the Pembroke and the Cardigan Welsh Corgi. Because our forces emphasize that these are two completely separate breeds, not just two color variations of the same dog.
Right. They share the Welsh geography and that low-set herding function, but their lineages are distinctly different.
Okay, break that down for us.
Well, the Cardigan traces back to Teckle or Dachshund-type lines, while the Pembroke, as we mentioned earlier, descends from Spitz-type dogs. So they have entirely different bone structures, ear shapes, and color ranges.
And the tail, oh my gosh, everyone assumes the rule is, no tail equals Pembroke, and a long tail means it's a Cardigan.
I hear that all the time.
But the tail situation is actually a massive mix of genetics and regional laws, right?
It is. It's very complicated.
Yeah, like some Pembrokes are born with natural bob tails thanks to a specific gene mutation, but others are born with full tails that are legally docked in some countries for historical working reasons.
And then, in many European countries, docking is completely banned.
Right, so you will absolutely see purebred Pembrokes with magnificent sweeping tails.
You will. And while we are on their physical construction, the coat is a massive factor for anyone bringing this dog into a home. They possess this incredibly dense, highly functional double coat.
Which means they shed.
Constantly.
Oh, profusely. The outer guard hairs are coarse, and that's to repel harsh weather and freezing Welsh rain.
Right.
While the undercoat is thick to insulate their core temperature, and when the seasons change, they blow that undercoat, which means, tumbleweeds of fur across your living room floor. They are the absolute opposite of hypoallergenic.
Good to know for anyone with allergies. And the sources also point out some strict rules about their colors. Recognized Pembroke colors are red, sable, fawn, and black and tan.
Right, those are the standard ones.
But patterns like blue merle, that mottled grayish blue coat, or brindle, which looks kind of like tiger stripes, those are completely unaccepted in Pembrokes.
They don't exist naturally in the breed. Yeah, so if you see someone marketing a quote-unquote rare blue merle Pembroke, the sources warn that you need to look very critically at that breeder, because it usually means they've crossbred with a Cardigan or another breed entirely, just to sell a trendy color.
Exactly. It's a huge red flag. And there is also the fluffy variation to consider.
Oh, the fluffies.
Yeah, some Pembrokes possess this recessive gene that gives them a much longer, softer coat without those harsh guard hairs. And it doesn't change the dog's internal drive at all, but it drastically alters the grooming requirements.
I can imagine.
A fluffy coat mats easily, And more dangerously, it acts as a visual illusion that perfectly hides the dog's waistline, which we'll talk about more later.
Yes, which actually ties perfectly into another massive visual illusion, the famous Corgi smile.
Oh, the smile.
You see it everywhere online. The dog looks thrilled, mouth wide open, lips pulled back, and we instantly project human happiness onto it.
We do, but visual cues are notoriously misleading with this breed. Physiologically, that extreme lip retraction, the wide mouth, and the heavy panting, it is very often a sign of overstimulation, heat stress, or even physical pain.
Wow.
They are incredibly stoic dogs, so they don't always whine when they hurt.
So people are just scrolling online, double tapping on a photo of a dog that might actually be deeply stressed out just because its facial anatomy mimics a human grin.
Exactly. You have to look at the tension in the rest of the body, the ears and the eyes, not just the shape of the mouth.
Okay, so we've established the body, the weaponized dwarfism, the weatherproof double coat, the incredible torque. It's one thing to have a body built to dodge hooves, but you don't survive in a pasture without the audacity to actually use it.
You really don't.
And that brings up the biggest clash for modern owners, which is their brain. Because you take this physical frame built for a brutal environment, but inside its head, it has the brain of an independent, highly reactive manager.
And the psychological mismatch is staggering for most people. I mean, think of their brain like a sheepdog's brain, but entirely compressed and intensified.
How so?
Well, a border collie controls a flock from a distance using the eye, right? They stare the sheep down to intimidate them into moving. A corgi doesn't use distance. A corgi controls cattle through sheer kinetic disruption.
Kinetic disruption.
Yeah, they act like a rogue bumper car, diving directly at the heels to force a physical reaction.
Because when you drop that kinetic disruption brain into a modern apartment, it's just chaos. It's like installing military-grade tracking software into a standard smart fridge.
Yeah.
Right? It's going to aggressively overreact to everyday movement.
Unfiltered chaos if it isn't managed. The ancient instincts manifest constantly. Take a simple scenario, right? A child sprinting from the living room down the hallway.
Right.
A retriever might just sit there and watch the kid run. A Pembroke doesn't just watch. It immediately analyzes the movement, arcs around the child, and tries to get ahead of them to block or organize the path.
Or the barking. Like a delivery driver drops a package and the dog is losing its mind before the knock even happens.
Because on a farm, a loud, piercing voice was a tool. You use noise to startle a stubborn animal into moving. The cattle might be long gone from the dog's life, but that instinct, watch the movement, respond to it, shout at it, organize it, that is still fully online.
And why should you care about this? I mean, really, because if you have a corgi that runs up and nips your ankle while you're playing in the backyard, you might just laugh it off, right?
All right.
You think, oh, look, the corgi's hurting us. How cute. But you are actually allowing a half-ton herding tactic to go completely unchecked in your home.
Yes. This raises an important question, right? How do owners manage this instinct? Because the heel nipping is where families get in real trouble. In the pastures, it was calculated, controlled pressure.
Right.
A dog that just bit recklessly would have been a massive liability. It would have sent the herd into a blind panic or gotten the dog killed. But in the modern home, that nipping usually surfaces during moments of high arousal or excitement.
Like when kids are playing.
Exactly. It is deeply rooted in their history, but it is entirely unacceptable in a family setting because a dog with substantial bone and fast acceleration can easily knock a toddler over.
So what does this all mean for training? You can't just yell at a dog that was historically bred to ignore aggressive 1,000-pound animals, right?
Yelling absolutely does not work. And ignoring the alert barking or laughing off the nipping, that just reinforces the behavior. You have to remember that they possess independent judgment.
Right. They had to think for themselves.
Right. A foot away from a cow, they had to make their own life or death decisions without waiting for a farmer's command. So today, if a Pembroke is bored, it will absolutely make its own decisions. You have to redirect that massive energy.
Basically by giving the manager a job.
Precisely. You have to provide structured outlets for that drive. Using a flirt pole, which is essentially a giant cat wand for dogs, that allows them to chase and bite a lure safely.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, or teaching them advanced obedience, agility, or using herding balls where they can push a large object around the yard. If you don't give them a job to do, they will assign themselves one. And their chosen job is usually guarding the front window and screaming at the mail carrier.
Which nobody wants that.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the final and really the most critical realization from the source material. Understanding their independent mind and their highly specialized, low-riding body leads to one undeniable truth. Treating this rugged worker like a delicate lapdog leads to severe and sometimes fatal health vulnerabilities.
It does. The structural armor that allowed them to survive the pasture makes them incredibly fragile if mismanaged in the living room. And the most silent, pervasive threat they face is weight gain.
It is terrifyingly easy to miss. You have a dog with a long spine acting like a bridge, right?
Yeah.
Supported by very short legs, and they are intensely, obsessively food motivated.
Oh, they're always hungry.
They are masters at begging. If you have a family of 4 and everyone sneaks the dog just one tiny piece of cheese a day, that weight piles on.
And this is where that double coat, or especially the fluffy coat, becomes a massive hazard. It acts as camouflage. You literally cannot eyeball a corgi to tell if it's overweight. By the time it is visually obvious to the naked eye, the dog is already carrying a devastating amount of extra load.
Because it changes the physics of their body.
Wait, exactly. It alters the leverage and applies massive torque on the intervertebral discs. You have to get your hands physically on the dog. You must be able to feel their ribs with light pressure and feel a defined tuck at their waist. Visual checks are just not enough.
So what does this all mean for other health issues?
Yeah.
Beyond weight, the sources dive into some specific health conditions that require serious attention. One of them is von Willebrand disease.
Yes, VWD. It's an inherited bleeding disorder. To put it simply, the dog is missing a specific protein that acts like the glue holding blood platelets together.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so if they are injured or go in for surgery, their blood struggles to clot. It requires careful screening by breeders to ensure they aren't passing the mutated gene down to the puppies.
The sources also heavily emphasize degenerative myelopathy, or DM. And this seems to be the condition that generates the most, anxious midnight internet searching by owners.
It definitely does, and it's a devastating disease. DM is essentially the canine equivalent of ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease. The protective myelin sheath around the spinal nerves begins to slowly degrade, and without that insulation, the communication between the brain and the hind legs is just disrupted.
But the sources point out a huge point of confusion regarding genetic testing for DM, right?
Yes, and this is critical for owners to understand. A genetic test can flag a dog as having an at-risk status for DM based on its DNA.
Okay.
But that result alone does not diagnose the disease, nor does it guarantee the dog will ever actually develop clinical symptoms. Many dogs live full lives without ever showing a sign, despite being genetically at risk.
Because other spinal injuries can look identical. So instead of panicking over a piece of paper, what should an owner actually be looking for physically?
You watch for the mechanical failures. A reluctance to rise in the morning, an uneven or wobbly gait, visible back discomfort, sudden weakness. Or, really the most common early sign, dragging the hind toes so that the nails scrape against the pavement.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, those physical signs require immediate veterinary intervention. Don't just rely on the genetic test.
Okay, I have to ask about the lifestyle reality here. With the heavy shedding, the loud alert barking, the extreme need for engagement, and a spine that requires careful weight management, is it even possible for this dog to live in an apartment? Or do you absolutely need a house with a huge backyard?
You know, as we connect this to the bigger picture, it's a very common assumption that working dogs need massive yards. But a backyard is often just a crutch for a busy owner.
A crutch. How so?
Well, a yard provides physical space, but it does not provide the shared engagement, the exploration, or the mental novelty that a working breed craves. A corgi left alone in a half-acre yard is just going to pace the fence line and bark at the neighbors. They want to work with you.
So apartment living isn't a deal breaker.
Not at all. Leg length and square footage have very little to do with suitability. What matters is the owner's commitment to purposeful activity.
Right.
If you live in an apartment but you are actively managing the alert barking, taking them on structured walks with real decompressive sniffing time, engaging in training sessions, and navigating stairs safely, that dog is going to be infinitely more fulfilled than the dog abandoned in a massive yard.
It all comes down to respecting the blueprint. If you answer the call honestly, if you commit to training instead of laughing off the ankle nipping, if you ruthlessly manage their weight despite the begging, if you give their brilliant reactive brain a real job, this breed is an incredible, funny, deeply loyal companion.
They really are.
But if you just want the smiling internet meme, you are going to end up with a very frustrated, destructive animal.
Exactly, because you cannot erase centuries of survival instincts with a velvet dog bed. That ancient blueprint hasn't changed.
Not one bit. So to wrap up this deep dive, let's go right back to where we started. We have taken the Pembroke Welsh Corgi on quite a journey today.
We really have.
From the enchanting lore of fairy saddles to dodging lethal hooves on a freezing Welsh morning, relying on its weaponized physical frame and kinetic disruption for pure survival, all the way to demanding treats by your refrigerator. The dog arsing around your toddler in the living room is the exact same fierce worker that moved cattle centuries ago.
It is a remarkable, challenging piece of living history, hiding right in plain sight.
It really is. Which leaves me with a final thought for you to mull over. If the adorable, bread loaf, smiling Corgi is secretly a rugged, highly engineered cattle driver beneath its fluffy exterior, what other seemingly harmless modern breeds are secretly harboring the fierce, specialized instincts of ancient working warriors right under our noses? Until next time, keep looking beneath the surface.